Hello, everyone. My name is Andre Hampshire, and in today's discussion, we're going to be looking at a passage from the SAT writing test. You can find this test in College Board's website. This is test number 8, and the passage that we will be studying is the first passage called Compost. Don't waste this waste. So let's begin at the beginning. If you want to pause this video, you may read the first paragraph on your own and come back to us when you're ready. Over the past generation, people in many parts of the United States have become accustomed to dividing their household waste products into different categories for recycling. The first thing that we're going to do is discuss the type of language that's used in this sentence. The type of language that's used here is general or vague. The way language works is like a matrushka doll. Those are those Russian dolls that if you open it, there's a doll inside, and then you can open that one, and then there's another doll inside. And in a way, language tends to work like this. So in this case, what are some examples of language that we have that are relatively general or vague? Well, there are two cases, two illustrations. One is household waste products. That really could be a number of things. And the second one is different categories. So here we go. Household waste products and different categories for recycling. So it seems to me like this sentence is going to behave like a topic sentence. How do we know if a sentence behaves like a topic sentence? Does it only have to use general or vague language? Not necessarily. One of the key components of a topic sentence is that it is further developed by relevant specific information. So let's see if that happens here. Paper may go into one container, glass and aluminum in another, regular garbage in a third. So there it is. It is a topic sentence because the language that we have that is general, in this case we had two examples, household waste products and different categories, is elaborated. Look at this, paper, glass, and aluminum. Those all go into household waste products. So if we take a look at this, let's cut this stuff out here. So the topic sentence, which we now know behaves like a topic sentence, said that there are household waste products, right? And over the course of time, which, by the way, tells you that time is an element of this discussion, has been placed into different categories. And that's just what a topic sentence does. What language fits into the first category? We have paper. We also have, I believe it's plastic. What else do we have? Is it glass? Let's take a look just to make sure. Paper, glass, and aluminum, and regular. So not plastic. This is just called regular here. Now, notice how the language for the second category remains somewhat vague and ambiguous, but once you think about it, it's rather simple. What are you going to call a paper recycling container? Probably just paper. And then a glass recycling container, you would just probably call it glass. So you're not going to give it a different name. You're just going to use whatever name represents the object that goes into it. So let's continue. Recently, some US cities have added a new category: compost organic matter such as food scraps and yard debris. So we have a transition here, and this has to do with question number 1. We have here an illustration of the general classification that's created here, and in the sentence following that, we've created another category, and here it's called compost. So we just add that to our classification. Now, what kind of a transition do you think fits in here? Let's look at the first one that we have, regardless. Generally, regardless means, however, irrespective of whatever we have said, we're going to say something else. This is not the case here. The case here is an elaboration of the ideas mentioned earlier. In other words, you're zooming in, you're providing examples. So the only reasonable option that we have for this question is answer choice D, for example. Now let's look at the sentence that follows. Like paper or glass recycling, composting demands a certain amount of effort from the public in order to be successful, but the inconveniences of composting are far outweighed by its benefits. This sentence first establishes a relationship between the efforts made during recycling paper or glass to the efforts that are required by composting. So effort is one component of the sentence. The second component of the sentence has to do with its benefits. Now notice that the language here is just like the language in the beginning. It's general. What are these efforts? What are these benefits? So is this going to lead to something that becomes a topic sentence? In other words, it's going to produce more detailed information. And if so, which one of these? Is it just the effort section, the benefit section, or maybe both? Again, the only way to find out is to continue to read. So let's see. Most people think of banana peels, eggshells, and dead leaves as waste, but compost is actually a valuable resource with multiple practical uses. So there it is. We're not going to be talking about the efforts involved in composting, but we are going to be discussing the benefits that result from composting. So what are those benefits? When utilized as a garden fertilizer, compost provides nutrients to soil and improves plant growth while deterring or killing pests and preventing some plant diseases. There is your benefit number one. It also enhances soil and texture, encouraging healthy roots and minimizing, or we're going to look at this annihilation thing in a little bit, the need for chemical fertilizers. Nevertheless, there's your benefit number two. Better than soil at holding moisture, compost minimizes water waste and storm runoff. And then we're going to look at this example, but in any case, there is your benefit number three. In large quantities, compost can be converted into a natural gas that can be used as fuel for transportation and so on. There is your fourth benefit. There is your fourth benefit. So here is a perfect illustration of a very structured paragraph. You begin with a topic sentence that is characterized by general language that introduces what specific information is going to follow. In this case, we are discussing the benefits of composting, and that is introduced in your topic sentence, and the specific benefits that arise from it are presented by each subsequent sentence. Now, let's look at the questions that we have 2, 3, and 4. Question number 2 is a diction problem. In other words, we have to choose the right word based on the context. So let's look at the sentence in which this word is found. It also enhances soil texture, encouraging healthy roots and minimizing or annihilating the need for chemical fertilizers. Well, the focus of this is composting, and what composting does is minimizes the need for chemical fertilizers, or it gets rid of it, right? So either you have a lower amount or you go all the way to zero. Now, annihilation could be argued that it takes it to zero, but it's too strong for the context of the passage. We're looking for something else. B, eliminating, is going to be the right answer because you're getting rid of the need for chemical fertilizers. Closing the door on is figurative language. Given the style of the passage, namely that is rather informative, you are not going to find very figurative language. So much so that if you were to scan this passage, you would be hard-pressed to find language that you'd kind of find in a novel or in poetry or something along that, something of that nature. So closing the door on is not stylistically correct, and alcine means getting rid of someone or of something. You might argue that that's close, but again, the more contextually relevant word is be eliminated. Now, question number 3 has to do with parallel structure. Let's look at what we have. Better than soil at holding moisture, compost minimizes water waste and storm runoff. That's 1. What is 3? We're going to skip 2 for now and let's look at 3. Helps reduce erosion. All right, Since it's a parallel structure problem, let's look at the verb, which is the one thing that initiates each structural unit. The first one is minimizes, which is present tense active verb, and the third one is helps, which is also present tense active verb. So in order to remain consistent, this should also be present tense active verb. So B is not going to work, D is not going to work. A does have increases, which is going to be the present tense active verb, but it's preceded by the pronoun, which is not present anywhere else. And it also, the use of the pronoun introduces other grammatical problems. So the answer for this one has to be C. Now, the last question, actually the second to the last question that we're going to be looking at is question number 4. Now, in grammar, punctuation, if you understand a little bit how it works, and we'll have a discussion about this later, it's rather arbitrary, but it has to be consistent. So what I mean by this is this. In large quantities, which one would expect to see when it is collected for an entire municipality, there is an interruption, right? And it's set off by the relative pronoun which. Now, the underlined portion is here, which means that this is the only portion that's subject to change. This part is not. So if this is fixed, we have to use this as our basis for whatever change happens here. So since this here is one structural unit, and since we can't change the end, however it ends has to be the same way it begins. And since this one ends with a closed parentheses, we have to begin with an open parentheses. So therefore, the answer for this one has to be B. Now, question number 5 has to do with the graph that can be found here, and we're going to be looking at that just now. In spite of all of compost's potential uses, however, most of this so-called waste is wasted. Well, we have a new paragraph, so already we expect the discussion to shift direction, and we also have a transition word that clearly suggests that the direction is shifting. In other words, we're not going to be discussing the benefits of composting anymore. We're going to be talking, presumably, if this does behave like a topic sentence, about how this potential waste, this so-called waste is wasted. According to the Environment Protection Agency, EPA, over 13 million tons of metal ended up in US landfills in 2009, along with over 13 million tons of yard debris. Well, you should have had a sort of red flag come up inside of your head, because throughout the entire paper, or for the majority of it, the context has focused on food waste. So why are we talking about metal? You see that 13 million is the correct answer for metals here. We do have 13 million, and everything else, in fact, is correct. All of these numbers are correct. So you're not going to find an answer choice that has an incorrect expression. But what we do have is an incorrect contextual phrase. So we should focus on food, which is what has been the focus for the past for the entire discussion. So we're looking at D, 33 million tons of food waste. Okay, everyone, this is it for today. As always, if you have any questions, please let me know. Feel free to reach out to me. I hope that you found this useful and instructive, and I look forward to working with you on a new passage shortly. Bye, everyone.